The thing that dismays me is my own inconstancy. This mammalian inertia. Not that I do evil or sinful things, but I don't do enough. It's not that I dwell on sinful thoughts, but that I forget to deal with the boss and my partner. And yet, the book tells me that God can look on the inside of me and see that dismaying and dismal picture, which I know about, and he still loves me. And I consider the imperfections of the 12 apostles. And believe me, if you want to deal with their negatives, and I made a speech on that subject last night, they're all a bunch of slobs. But they also had qualities, and Jesus loved them. And most of them played way over their heads. Just think, let's take inventory of the 12. Andrew, inexpressive, had a hard time complimenting people. Peter, mercurial, undependable. John, big ego, shone through in the fourth gospel too, when he was old, senile. He was the apostle whom Jesus loved. James, no discretion. Got himself killed off early in the game because he just didn't realize what wasn't his business. Philip, no imagination. Nathaniel, a wisecracker. Matthew, a guy with a kind of a lurid past. A publican, a tax squeezer. Simon Zelotes, a pig-headed patriot. Thomas, bad disposition. Wife delighted when he joined up so he'd be away from home. Judas, a well-educated prig. The Alphaeus twins, stupid. Weaknesses and limitations, but on what could be accomplished when his Father's Spirit worked within these men, and when he worked with them as a man among men. And you know, he had a pretty good batting average. He only struck out once. I think this is fun, incidentally. It's a dismaying fun. And the humor which I bring to bear on my own religious problems is rueful humor. It's a hopeless stern chase, you see. My ideals of what a man should be are growing geometrically. But at best, my progress is a limping arithmetic progression. And I'm in the sad fix of a guy who in a rowboat is diligently chasing a motorboat. Now, when I was about 15 or 17, I was running neck and neck with that motorboat. I was pretty hot stuff. When you're a young Marine, you've got it made. You've arrived. Ever since then, the gap has been widening between the rowboat and the motorboat. And I've considered, this is a real paradox, I've considered the alternate reactions. One is to torpedo the motorboat. This eases all tension at the cost of all progress, or at least at the cost of all ideals. Then I thought of stopping rowing. You know, you say, oh, the hell with it. You know, they said it was impossible, and so we said the hell with it. And I think the best course of action is the third course, which is to draw deeply on humor. I can look at the riverbank, and I believe I'm making progress upstream. And then I look at the motorboat, and the damn thing's farther away from me than it ever was. I think at this point one should laugh. There are only two other alternatives, to cuss and to cry. And I think laughing is by far the best of the three.
And I'm on the bank still trying to hew out a log. I haven't gotten in the water yet.
Well, it's a stern chase, and you never make it. Here again with ideals, Betty. Ideals are like stars. If you're going to navigate at night, I can think of nothing more useful than to have these stars. But a navigator would be a fool if he thought he could actually sail to them. The place for stars is in the skies, not in one's eyes.
That's lovely.
Yeah. They have a function. But our disappointments are born out of a misconception of their function, at least in this life. An anarchist is a real idealist. And when he gets to Havana, he can be happy. Because it says in here, concerning the government of the central universe, there is none. When beings are perfect or perfected, you don't need government anymore. Would you like a picture of human mind, Betty?
Yes, I love it.
You ever been to the planetarium?
Yes.
Have all of you been to a planetarium? I want you to visualize a double planetarium. It's got a nether hemisphere as well as an upper hemisphere. And in the center, with a support, is a platform. And on that platform, there's a searchlight. And this searchlight has got a 360-degree swing around the planetarium, and it's got an arc. A little ways up and a little ways down. It can illuminate, if we can use some geographical terms, it can illuminate what I would call the torrid zone in the planetarium. It can hit the whole belt of the equator, and a little ways up and a little ways down. When we go into the south temperate area, below the torrid zone, I think we've hit the true subconscious. I think the north temperate area is the superconscious. I think the spot of light which you throw on the hemisphere is your consciousness at any given moment, and you can swing it around, as you know you can. I can visualize a problem in Cleveland right now, which is this telegram I got. And I can think about that. I can see George Hayes. I can see the problem of the Cold War going on between the editor and the editor-in-chief, with the editor running mad and the editor-in-chief running scared to death, to the point where he'll lie. And I can conceive of the red herrings we've got to use to save the situation. Now I'm back here in California. You follow me? I swung the spotlight. And I could feel it. When you go to sleep at night, you turn the spotlight out. And there's just a gentle gray glow all over. I think above the torrid zone, above the north temperate zone in the upper hemisphere, in the polar regions, is the embryonic soul. And I visualize the adjuster at the North Pole. This soul is a true embryo. It's carried in the womb of the mind. And it was conceived when the adjuster invaded this hemisphere. And this soul is a growing entity. Now, down here on the platform, you could carry it on farther down into spinal reflexes at the South Pole, vegetative nervous system. On this platform is a red button. That's the red button of decision. And all decision takes place in the conscious level of the mind. All conscious decision. I can't make decisions at the level of the soul or the superconsciousness because I can't get my searchlight up there. I only get it so high. You follow me? There is a continual down trickle from the upper areas of darkness into places where I can find it, it is a continual upwelling from the lower levels of the subconscious to the level where I can find it with a searchlight. When we wake up in the morning with a heck of a good solution to a very puzzling problem, it's a question as to where it came from. Did it come from bottom side or top side? I don't regard bottom side as nefarious, although it's distinctly mammalian in its lower levels. Bottom side can do a terrific IBM job of running through the memory cards and giving you a darn ingenious solution to a purely temporal material problem. I think a lot of good comes out of the subconscious as well as a lot of balderdash. I think the spirit of truth is working in the upper hemisphere. I think all spiritual influences are in the upper hemisphere. I would say that the 5 mammalian adjutants work in the southern hemisphere. The two human adjutants and midware adjutants, worship and wisdom, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, and the adjuster work in the northern hemisphere. This is my working model of a concept of a human mind. When we wake up in the mansion world, this red button of decision will register directly in the soul. I think the human soul is conscious. The superconscious mind is the north temperate zone. But the north polar regions are the regions of what I would denominate the mid-mind. It is the mind between the divine mind and the purely human mind. And this is not material mind. This is a Morantia reality, a Morantia embryo. I am in the process of gestation is going on. I am aborning me to be. I think this soul can register things if it's beyond the purely fetal stage, the early fetal stage. Here's an interesting statement. Over on page 432, third paragraph on Supervisor Seraphim. We're up on the constellation level now, where the legislative function. They're talking about the law forecasters. In other words, these are the experts which they consult when they say we're contemplating the passing of such and such a law and how it would work out. You see, if we had experts like that, we would never pass the Prohibition Amendment. The law forecasters would say, you are going to turn a gradually temperate group into a drinking group. Near the end of the paragraph, these seraphim seek no special favors for one group or another. They're not lobbyists. But they do appear before the celestial lawmakers to speak for those who cannot be present to speak for themselves. Even mortal man may contribute to the evolution of universe law, for these very seraphim do faithfully and fully portray not necessarily man's transient and conscious desires, but rather the true longings of the inner man, the evolving Morantius soul of the material mortal on the worlds of space. These seraphim run a Gallup poll. And what do they deal with? They deal with human beings at the level of the evolving soul. We never knew we were polled. This all happened in the North Polar regions. You follow me? And this tells me something about a soul down here. This soul is not unconscious. Even though I am not conscious of the consciousness of my embryonic soul. This soul can speak. And this soul can speak for me. Because my material mind is the mother of this soul, as the adjuster is the father of this soul. This is our child. There's about 1,000 human beings on earth who collaborate with the seraphim, who are practically speaking the superhuman government of this planet. We've talked about two groups of seraphim, the progress angels and the religious guardians. There's a good example of the Promethean, Epimethean balancing. These 1,000 mortals, approximately 1,000, are trained and rehearsed to act in certain planetary emergencies. If you think of a famous human being, he probably is not a reservist, because by far the majority live and die and never function. The emergency didn't take place. It's like an insurance policy. It's like an accident policy. You have it, but you hope you don't cash in on it. These folks I gather from this section here, function group-wise. Over on the next page, it says, in paragraph 3, the Corps has no permanent head, but does have permanent councils which constitute its governing organization. These embrace the Judiciary Council, the Historicity Council, the Council on Political Sovereignty, and many others. From time to time, in accordance with the Corps organization, titular mortal heads of the whole Reserve Corps have been commissioned by these permanent councils for specific function. The tenure of such reservist chiefs is usually a matter of a few hours' duration, being limited to the accomplishment of some specific task at hand. Now, what's functioning here? I think the soul is functioning. And I think the soul could function if you stopped all other function. And if you stopped all other function, the reservist would have to be asleep, wouldn't he? Couldn't be any conscious interference. Maybe even the thought adjuster wouldn't be there. And then maybe these human beings could collaborate, unknowingly collaborate, as a group at the Morantia level of the soul. I've often pondered, suppose a reservist were engaged in actual warfare. Would they put him to sleep and let him get shot up? No. I'm sure they wouldn't do that. I'm sure they'd never jeopardize a human being. But suppose a battle were in progress. What could they do? Well, I can think of one thing, and I always think they do the simplest thing possible. They could make fog. They could get that darn thing so foggy that there could be no fighting if it were that important. As long as we're discussing the soul, I think this paragraph is very interesting. I think in certain instances, a soul is functional here on Earth, but only under peculiar circumstances. It's on page 1196. There's a section entitled Self-Acting Adjusters, and it's item 4. It goes on to say that these adjusters seem to possess a marked degree of will in all matters not involving the human personalities of their immediate indwelling, as is indicated by their numerous exploits, both within and without the mortal subjects of attachment. Such adjusters participate in numerous activities of the realm, but more frequently they function as undetected indwellers of the earthly tabernacles of their own choosing. Undoubtedly, these higher and more experienced types of adjusters can communicate with those in other realms. But while self-acting adjusters do thus intercommunicate, they do so only on the levels of their mutual work and for the purpose of preserving custodial data essential to the adjuster ministry of the realms of their sojourn, though on occasions they have been known to function in interplanetary matters during times of crisis. This is a real emergency line of communication, which would work in the absence of all other lines of communication.
In the next paragraph, Bill, it says that they can leave
Yes.
the human body at will.
Yes.
What particular relationship would the soul and the personality take up if your adjuster left for any length of time? Like,
I would guess if it were by design, you'd be asleep. I don't think you would be functional to all practical intents and purposes during that time. I'm guessing here now, but that would seem
well, it
reasonable.
says again here, in the original life plans they were provided for, but they are not indispensable to material existence.
That's right. Because not all mortals have them prior to the coming of the Spirit of Truth. Cain didn't have an adjuster until he asked for one.
You personally known anyone who you think might not have had an adjuster?
I'd say any idiot. And I'm using the term literally. I don't think idiots have them. I don't think they're human. I don't think the top two adjutants are there. I don't think they're personal either. I think if Oh, let's think of a human being who was injured in such way as to destroy normal thought process from there on. I think at that point, the adjuster leaves. And at that point, in the universe records, the affairs of this human being are wound up. He's dead, as far as the universe is concerned. His body might live on like a vegetable for quite a number of years. But in the records of the universe, he died the day of the accident.
It's just insane this very person becomes really insane.
Yes. Total insanity, I think, would liberate the adjuster.
Total insanity. Now, suppose you find someone who is occasionally insane, as a sex pervert.
Oh, I think the adjuster would stand by if the individual is as rational interludes and would try to help that person. And I think you tempt with, let's say you were out for a long time, but could come back. I think the adjuster would stay right here, patiently awaiting the return of normal consciousness.
Patient.
Sure. Well, I use the word because I'm patient, but the adjuster is beyond that. I'm often impatient, too.
Something I would like to discuss sometime, we'll only get around to it, is the spiritual. We mentioned that, Dorothy, spiritual life, like physical energy is consumed, spiritual effort results in relative spiritual exhaustion.
What page?
How is the spirit replenished? How is spiritual energy restored?
Well, let's read what Rodin said about that. The greatest of all methods of problem solving I've learned from Jesus, your master. I refer to that which he so consistently practices and which he has so faithfully taught you, the isolation of worshipful meditation. In this habit of Jesus going off so frequently by himself to commune with the Father in heaven is to be found the technique, not only of gathering strength and wisdom for the ordinary conflicts of living, but also of appropriating the energy for the solution of the higher problems of a moral and spiritual nature. But even correct methods of solving problems will not compensate for inherent defects of personality or atone for the absence of the hunger and thirst for true righteousness. I'm deeply impressed with the custom of Jesus in going apart by himself to engage in these seasons of solitary survey of the problems of living, to seek for new stores of wisdom and energy for meeting the manifold demands of social service, to quicken and deepen the supreme purpose of living by actually subjecting the total personality to the consciousness of contacting with divinity, to grasp for possession of new and better methods of adjusting oneself to the ever-changing situations of living existence, to effect those vital reconstructions and readjustments of one's personal attitudes, which are so essential to enhanced insight into everything worthwhile and real, and to do all this with an eye single to the glory of God, to breathe in sincerity your Master's favorite prayer, not my will, but yours be done. This worshipful practice of your Master brings that relaxation which renews the mind, that illumination which inspires the soul, that courage which enables one bravely to face one's problems, that self-understanding which obliterates debilitating fear, and that consciousness of union with divinity which equips man with a self-assurance that enables him to dare to be godlike. The relaxation of worship, or spiritual communion as practiced by the Master, relieves tension, removes conflicts, and mightily augments the total resources of the personality. And all this philosophy, plus the gospel of the kingdom, constitutes the new religion, as I understand it. I think there's another awfully good quote on page 1001. Prayer may become an established custom. Many pray because others do. Still others pray because they fear something direful may happen if they do not offer their regular supplications. To some individuals, prayer is the calm expression of gratitude. To others, a group expression of praise, social devotions. Sometimes it is the imitation of another's religion, while in true praying, it is the sincere and trusting communication of the spiritual nature of the creature with the anywhere presence of the Spirit of the Creator. Prayer may be a spontaneous expression of God consciousness, or a meaningless recitation of theologic formulas. It may be the ecstatic praise of a God-knowing soul, or the slavish obeisance of a fear-ridden mortal. It is sometimes the pathetic expression of spiritual craving, and sometimes the blatant shouting of pious phrases. Prayer may be joyous praise or a humble plea for forgiveness. Prayer may be the childlike plea for the impossible or the mature entreaty for moral growth and spiritual power. A petition may be for daily bread, or it may embody a wholehearted yearning to find God and to do His will. It may be a wholly selfish request, or a true and magnificent gesture toward the realization of unselfish brotherhood. Prayer may be an angry cry for vengeance, or a merciful intercession for one's enemies. It may be the expression of a hope of changing God, or the powerful technique of changing oneself. It may be the cringing plea of a lost sinner before a supposedly stern judge, or the joyful expression of a liberated son of the living and merciful Heavenly Father. Modern man is perplexed by the thought of talking things over with God in a purely personal way. Many have abandoned regular praying. They only pray when under unusual pressure in emergencies. Man should be unafraid to talk to God, but only a spiritual child would undertake to persuade or presume to change God. That's the practice of magic, or the attempted practice of magic. That's where I think the energy comes from, Betty. You do use it up, and you got to refill the gas tank somewhere. I think that spiritual energy comes from prayer and from worship and meditation. I think psychic energy, mind energy losses are depleted through play, relaxation, refreshment, diversion. Jesus saying, let's take a day off. He went to, who was it, Andrew, and says, tell him I'm very tired, and that I'd like to take a day off, and in resting, let's not talk about all our problems, should have some fun. This was psychological, not necessarily spiritual. These men had raw nerve endings. They weren't out of spiritual gas.
Dorothy and I discussing this also felt that doing good, didn't we, in a sense, was a type of spiritual recharging.
Sure. I think that we're equipped with three kinds of energy. If we work physically, we need calories and sleep. If we're working on a loading dock, I would say we need about 4,500 calories and 10 hours of sleep. I'd like to see what any of you would look like if you ate 4,500 calories a day for a year. The effects would be startling. We don't require that much physical energy because we're not burning it. We do require the restoration of mental energy, nervous energy, and I think that's play, relaxation, humor, having fun, dabbling at things. And then I think spiritually, this is the technique of recharging. We need to recharge in many ways. And then we need to discharge. This is living richly, to take in much and give out much. In my own philosophy of life, I want to live as richly as I can. And to me, to live richly is to receive from this life simply everything I have capacity to receive, and to give to this life everything that's within my power to give. And I couldn't honestly wish for the one without also being willing to pay the other. And the more that goes both ways, the richer the life. This is richness of living. This is life in technicolor, in a wide screen instead of black and white.
Well, this would appeal very much to me, but I don't quite know how to attain it. I have fears, inhibitions, things that hold me back from sipping.
Oh, well, we ask the questions in part 1, 2, and 3. We get the answers in part 4. Jesus had a long talk with a young man who was fearful and downcast. Failing to derive comfort from association with these fellows, this youth had sought the solitude of the hills. He'd grown up with a feeling of helplessness and inferiority. These natural tendencies had been augmented by numerous difficult circumstances, which the lad had encountered as he grew up, notably the loss of his father when he was 12 years of age. As they met, Jesus said, "Greetings, my friend. Why so downcast on such a beautiful day? If something has happened to distress you, perhaps I can in some manner assist you. At any rate, it affords me real pleasure to proffer my services." Oh, what a salesman. The young man was disinclined to talk, and so Jesus made a second approach to his soul, saying, "I understand. You come up in these hills to get away from folks, so, of course, you do not want to talk with me. But I would like to know whether you are familiar with these hills. Do you know the direction of the trails, and perchance could you inform me as the best route to Phoenix?" Now this youth was very familiar with these mountains, and he really became much interested in telling Jesus the way to Phoenix. So much so that he marked out all the trails on the ground and fully explained every detail. But he was startled and made curious when Jesus, after saying goodbye and making as if he were taking leave, suddenly turned to him saying, "I well know you wish to be alone with your disconsolation, but it would be neither kind nor fair for me to receive such generous help from you as to how best to find my way to Phoenix, and then unthinkingly to go away from you without making the least effort to answer your appealing request for help and guidance regarding the best route to the goal of destiny which you seek in your heart while you tarry here on the mountainside." You know, he'd do anything to help a person, wouldn't he? He'd make himself out to be dumb and humble if he could only create that opportunity to accept help, which in turn would give him the chance to give help. Again, I say, what a salesman. As you so well know the trails to Phoenix, having traversed them many times, so do I well know the way to the city of your disappointed hopes and thwarted ambitions. And since you've asked me for help, I will not disappoint you. The youth was almost overcome, but he managed to stammer out, But I didn't ask you for anything." And Jesus, laying a gentle hand on his shoulder, said, "No, son, not with words, but with longing looks did you appeal to my heart. My boy, to one who loves his fellows, there is an eloquent appeal for help in your countenance of discouragement and despair. Sit down with me while I tell you of the service trails and the happiness highways which lead from the sorrows of self to the joys of loving activities in the brotherhood of man and in the service of the God of heaven." By this time the young man much desired to talk with Jesus, and he knelt at his feet imploring Jesus to help him, to show him the way of escape from his world of personal sorrow and defeat. Said Jesus, "My friend, arise. Stand up like a man. You may be surrounded with small enemies and may be retarded by many obstacles, but the big things and the real things of this world and the universe are on your side. The sun rises every morning to salute you, just as it does the most powerful and prosperous man on earth. Look, you have a strong body and powerful muscles. Your physical equipment is better than the average. Of course, it is just about useless while you sit out here on the mountainside and grieve over your misfortunes, real and fancied. But you could do great things with your body if you would hasten off to where great things are waiting to be done. You are trying to run away from your unhappy self, but it cannot be done. You and your problems of living are real. You cannot escape them as long as you live. But look again. Your mind is clear and capable. Your strong body has an intelligent mind to direct it. Set your mind at work to solve its problems. Teach your intellect to work for you. Refuse longer to be dominated by fear like an unthinking animal. Your mind should be your courageous ally in the solution of your life problems, rather than your being, as you have been, its abject fear slave and the bondservant of depression and defeat. But most valuable of all, your potential of real achievement is the spirit which lives within you, and which will stimulate and inspire your mind to control itself and activate the body, if you will release it from the fetters of fear, and thus enable your spiritual nature to begin your deliverance from the evils of inaction by the power presence of living faith. And then forthwith will this faith vanquish fear of men by the compelling presence of that new and all-dominating love of your fellows, which will so soon fill your soul to overflowing because of the consciousness which has been born in your heart that you are a child of God. This day, my son, you are to be reborn, reestablished as a man of faith, courage, and devoted service to man for God's sake. And when you become so readjusted to life within yourself, you become likewise readjusted to the universe. You have been born again, born of the Spirit, and henceforth will your whole life become one of victorious accomplishment. Trouble will invigorate you. Disappointment will spur you on. Difficulties will challenge you, and obstacles will stimulate you. Arise, young men. Say farewell to the life of cringing fear and fleeing cowardice. Hasten back to duty, and live your life in the flesh as a son of God, a mortal dedicated to the ennobling service of man on earth, and destined to the superb and eternal service of God in eternity.
That is our nail that tree.
Yeah, he launched him on the Paradise Ascent. Let's see what the Greek had to say about this. The effort toward maturity,
That's a page.
1777, second year of the Revolutionary War. The effort toward maturity necessitates work, and work requires energy. Whence the power to accomplish all this? The physical things can be taken for granted, but the Master has well said, man cannot live by bread alone. Mrs. Steen's bread would come close to that, but granted the possession of a normal body and reasonably good health, we must next look for those lures which will act as a stimulus to call forth man's slumbering spiritual forces. Jesus has taught us that God lives in man. Then how can we induce man to release these soul-bound powers of divinity and infinity? How shall we induce men to let go of God, that he may spring forth to the refreshment of our souls while in transit outward, and then to serve the purpose of enlightening, uplifting, and blessing countless other souls? How best can I awaken these latent powers for good which lie dormant in your souls? One thing I'm sure of, emotional excitement is not the ideal spiritual stimulus. Excitement does not augment energy. It rather exhausts the powers of both mind and body. Whence then comes the energy to do these great things? Look to your Master. Even now he's out in the hills taking in power, while we are here giving out energy. The secret of all this problem is wrapped up in spiritual communion in worship. From the human standpoint, it is a question of combined meditation and relaxation. Meditation makes the contact of mind with spirit. Relaxation determines the capacity for spiritual receptivity. And this interchange of strength for weakness, courage for fear, the will of God for the mind of self, constitutes worship. At least that is the way the philosopher views it. When these experiences are frequently repeated, they crystallize into habits, strength-giving and worshipful habits. And such habits eventually formulate themselves into a spiritual character. And such a character is finally recognized by one's fellows as a mature personality. These practices are difficult and time-consuming at first, but when they become habitual, they are at once restful and time-saving. The more complex society becomes, and the more the lures of civilization multiply, the more urgent will become the necessity for God-knowing individuals to form such protective habitual practices designed to conserve and augment the spiritual energies. And those two statements to me have always been complimentary. Jesus, such personal advice to the boy, and then Rodin's philosophizing about exactly the same thing. This discussion of human paradoxes runs all the way through this book. It might be likened to the problem of tightrope walking between spiritism and secularism, between courage, to have courage without pride. To be totally without pride involves the dismal picture of a deflated ego. And a deflated ego could best be described by likening it to a car with 4 flat tires. This car is very nearly useless. The problem is air pressure. How do we get enough air pressure in these tires so that the car is mobile and runs well? This means we pump them up with pride. But there's always a danger that we pump too long and we blow the tires out in terms of self-love. It takes a little pride to make a person stand up. It took some pride for Van to take on Caligastia, Dalagastia, and then later on Lucifer as well. It took real courage there, and there's a component of pride in that courage. To be totally without pride would add up to being totally useless as a potential finaliter. A son is not a subservient slave. A son can take pride in membership in that family. A finaliter is not a puppet of God. A finaliter is a junior partner in relation to a senior partner. And there is a dignity involved in a partnership relation, no matter how small one of the partners is and how large the other partner may be. When you invest an animal with a complex personality, which really can choose, which really does have free will, when you back this up with a part of absolute divinity, absolute in terms of quality, though less than absolute in terms of quantity, undiluted, undiminished divinity. This individual has got so much equipment that he could look himself over and say, gee, aren't I wonderful? This is very much like one of the stewards, or better still, let's call them vice presidents. This big tycoon went on a journey. And he gave each of these vice presidents several $1 million and says, have at it, boys, let's multiply the wealth. Suppose that vice president had looked at these millions of dollars not as a trustee, but as an owner, and taken great pride in the possession of these funds which had merely been entrusted to him. How can we have confidence in ourselves and at the same time realize that this wealth of personality and spirit nature is not ours by virtue of the fact that we've earned it? It's given to us. It's for free. If we can realize that this has been entrusted to us, then we can have confidence without too much pride. Great humility can be associated with great courage. And this is about the right air pressure for the tires on the automobile. The universal economy is based on intake and output. Throughout the eternal career, you will never encounter monotony of inaction or stagnation of personality. Progress is made possible by inherent motion. Achievement grows out of the divine capacity for action, and achievement is the child of imaginative adventure. But inherent in this capacity for achievement is the responsibility of ethics, the necessity for recognizing that the world and the universe are filled with a multitude of differing types of beings. All of this magnificent creation, including yourself, was not made just for you. This is not an egocentric universe. The gods have decreed it is more blessed to give than to receive. And Jesus put it, it makes you happier to give than to receive.